Country's economy recording the worst quarterly collapse on record by shrinking 51% during the second quarter of 2020. There are concerns that there is a lack of post-COVID recovery plan action, and this could lead to a deeper economic crisis. Economist at Pan-African Investment and Research Services, Dr. Iraj Abedian, joins us now. Tell us a little bit more about what needs to happen in this recovery plan. Dr. Iraj, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight. Now, the fiscal position, position situation has been analyzed back and forth for years now. But there is rising concern that the action plan of recovery will really not see the light of day. What is your feeling?
Yeah, I think increasingly it is becoming a real prospect, because the president for 5 months at least has been saying in a couple of weeks we're going to have this magnificent recovery plan. We are working on it. Another 2 weeks, and 5 months later he has delivered nothing but empty promises. And that's exactly what this economy in recession, battered by the COVID-19, cannot handle. This economy needs very urgent, well-considered and comprehensive parachute to revive expectations and to resume investments that can lead to growth and job creation. And of course, government is paralyzed, is not delivering.
How is that going to happen when it seems we don't have a corporation or social impact of any sort? I mean, just spoke to Kusatu. Kusatu says, well, don't touch the public servant salaries, but go and deal with illicit flows of money, go deal with corruption in government. That's where you're going to recover the money. And government saying, well, we can't afford to pay you the third year of this 2018 agreement. And that there in itself threatens to collapse this whole arrangement, where we're going to be seeing more protest action and none of the productivity that we need to see.
Yeah, I think that is correct. That's one of the big tensions. Equally, don't touch the state-owned enterprises that are bleeding. Eskom has got 45,000 employees whilst it's bankrupt financially. Nobody is allowed to touch those, and that is exactly the test of leadership. The test of leadership is to accept when the unions are right. The unions are correct. Government must go after the corrupt and recover the money. And we are not talking about hundreds of billions of rand, not tens of billions. We know who they are, we know where they are, but the government isn't doing nothing to recover at least half of that. And to be very specific, so that there is no misunderstanding, we get corporates who are in malfeasance, who have stolen money. We have private sector, public sector politicians and their friends. Now, we know where this money is, but the government is doing nothing to recover at least half of it, which would then, in the short term, enable some of its shortfalls on the budgetary side to be able to come to some kind of settlement with the unions. Instead, the government expects the unions to take all the wage cuts without politicians cutting anything. They're still flying around, flying their friends around. They are not at all regretful that they are squandering public resources. So I think there is a lot of value in what the unions are saying, but at the same time, unions are pushing the government. The government wants to sort of everybody else changes, but not themselves. And that's, I think, again, is a big test of President Ramaphosa. He needs to start with his cabinet. He's got to cut the cost of that cabinet by half and then come to the unions and say, this is what we've done, play your part. It got to recover the stolen money from the private sector and say, play your part. We can't do, in the very exceptionally difficult conditions, unusual conditions, we cannot run the situation in a usual way. And unfortunately, the president continues wanting to do the usual thing in a very unusual time. And the more he delays it, the more the economy goes on a free fall.
Now, easy pickings, low-hanging fruits was, of course, the first thing to deal with is energy. I mean, if you're making sure that there's energy, companies at least have certainty that we can at least start a factory and that factory will have power to be powered, and this economy will get something going. So what do you make of the move that has been made already, the announcement of the bid window 5 for IPP now underway, and of course the energy self-generation projects that are above 1 megawatt also being fast-tracked?
I think that's an excellent move, a move certainly in the right direction. There are still flaws in it. Window 5 is still, the minister insists that all the producers or generators, private sector IPPs, need to sell to Eskom at a particular given price. They need to free that sector. If municipalities want to buy it from IPPs, if the industries and mining companies want to buy it from IPPs directly, they should be allowed to do so. That's what will unleash further investments. The problem with forcing IPPs to sell it to Eskom is that, first of all, IPPs get more than what they should get. Secondly, Eskom ends up again holding a stronghold on the economy. Eskom is not an exciting, inspiring institution to hang the economy's growth on it. Every investor who hears Eskom can only think of one thing: a broken bucket that is not being fixed, and taxpayers have to keep it up. So forcing IPPs to go through Eskom is a mistake in Window 5. But the generation, the promotion of extra energy through private sector investment is the right thing.
Now, there are trillions of rands that the private sector is sitting on and not investing back into this economy. They're sitting in the bank. It seems everybody else must make a trade-off. What about the private sector making that trade-off and putting that money into the economy?
Absolutely. But that money is sitting. Remember, private sector sits on money not because they want to sit on money. Any capitalist who sits on money doesn't understand capital and doesn't understand money. They are sitting or stuck with the money because some or other regulatory obstacle stops them from investing. You just mentioned energy. Try to open a mine in this country and get assurance of supply of energy from Eskom. You can't get it. How do you invest in that mine if you don't have energy? Try to have irrigation rights for farming and expansion of farming. The minister or the ministry in charge, and I can tell you from experience, takes 3-4 years to do nothing, never mind to answer. So how do you invest in farming and agro-processing if water rights are so bottled up that the department doesn't know what they're doing? Go to urban planning. Municipalities are an absolute mess, financially and managerially. So I think money is stuck there. The good thing is that the country is not short of money. The terrible bad news is that in every sector of the economy, there are regulatory obstacles, there are administrative obstacles that gets in the way of investment. That's what we need to sort out.
Now, of course, this plan that we have been waiting for, as you mentioned, for 5 months now, it's rumored that it contains some kind of commitment from government to relax some of this red tape, but also to ensure that there is some review of the employment and empowerment-related policy and legislation, which will probably be talking to the issues that the mines are raising. Is that the kind of commitment that you would want? But not only commitment, but action that could certainly set off this economy.
You know, quite frankly, we've gone beyond two things. One is talking, and the economy can't afford more talk and more promise, and we cannot have commitment. We need to have time-bound, implementable plans that we report on every quarter, every 6 months, to see what has been done, not what we intend to do. So I think that's another absolute game change that we should do, or mindset change, that this talk and promise and commitment. For example, the president has had 2 presidential investment conferences. People have made commitments. What happened to those commitments? Nothing. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of building expectations in the nation amongst those who are looking for jobs, among those who are looking for some kind of improvement in expectations and sentiments. But these conferences are all about talk and commitment. We need to move from talk and commitment to planning, implementing, and reporting. The only time that the president and the cabinet should talk is when they come to report what they have done, not to come and say, wait another 3 weeks, we are still trying to sort the problem. 6 months later, they're still on the same spot. That's where the economy goes into contraction, and as you mentioned, unemployment rises, and level of desperation and hurt in the society, suffering increases.
Dr. Iraj Abedian, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight.